Hey there, Ryan Reynolds here. It's a new year, and you know what that means. No, not the diet. Resolutions. A way for us all to try and do a little bit better than we did last year. And my resolution, unlike big wireless, is to not be a raging and raise the price of wireless on you every chance I get. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy. That's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
And it turns out that Gene Wilder is a fantastic rodeo rider for no good reason.
Because he went into the warden's office and the warden has a mechanical bull and the warden said, sit on that, and he sat on it
and turned it up to 6.
Yeah.
And that was it. He was the best rodeo rider anybody's seen.
Like, how else would you find out you're the best rodeo rider? Because it's not like it's one of those things you just would stumble across.
Welcome to the 77th 77, the year of Star Wars and punk episode of Flixwatcher podcast. And I'm not sure that makes sense, but hey, welcome. Hey everybody, and welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. I'm joined by Tiernan.
Hello.
And Jason.
Hi there.
And Helen.
Hello.
As always. And we're going to be talking about the Richard Pryor, Gene Wilder film, Stir Crazy.
Come find us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod. Visit the website flixwatcher.tv for full listings, and don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes and leave us an awesome review.
So all films were available on Netflix at the time of recording, guys. Just as a bit of a warning, there is some bad language and there will be spoilers. You have been warned.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher Podcast. Today our guests are Jason and Tiernan. Now, if you would like to tell our lovely listeners a little bit about the podcasts that you both work on, please.
So yeah, I'm Jason, and I run, I guess I'll say, Stop and Search, which is now I can say an award-winning podcast because we.
Yay!
How did that happen? I still don't know. How.
The most intelligent podcast, isn't it?
It was Smartest Podcast and Best Current Affairs. So it was 2. We beat Ed Miliband, which that's going on my gravestone. we beat Ed Miliband. I even said that in Parliament because we recorded an episode in Parliament just 2 weeks ago. We had Thang and Debonair, and I even said, sorry, Thang, but we beat Ed Miliband, and there was just like a hush across the room. So I don't know if that was worth bragging about or not. But anyway, we do drug policy. So if you don't think that all drugs should be legal and regulated, come and listen to us. We'll tell you why. We got celebrity guests, politicians, world leaders, and we just have a talk about drugs.
And Tiernan was on an episode.
Yes, Tiernan was fantastic.
Was I? Thanks. I have no idea what we're talking about though.
Yeah, because I think
I just accidentally admitted to having some really fun times at festivals, and
which is a good thing to do because that's the point of
it.
That's
what festivals are for.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not doing that, then you're doing festivals wrong.
Very true. That's very true.
Unless you're like under 18, maybe.
Yeah,
they recommend it like
caveat said. Yes, if you are
unless you're
under
5,
18, please do things sensibly. Festival sensibly. It was good fun though, that one, wasn't it? And there was lots of other clever people on, like Felicity Moss and Andrew Doyle.
And that was one we did about the media and how they interpret drug policy.
And they don't like drugs, the media.
Especially the Daily Mail.
No.
We could do a whole episode on that. But there might be changes in that. So yeah, it's an interesting podcast, I think I'm allowed to say, because it's the guests that make it. They genuinely do. There's just so many different ways we can cover drug policy, media, addiction, all these different things. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
Well, it's good. I mean, I've been to a couple of records, and the first one I went to was the featured Danny, who is a ex-undercover police officer, and she was like quite young. I don't think she didn't go to university, did she? But she went straight into the police force and went undercover and got in some pretty hairy situations.
So yeah, that was the one we did at Waterstones, because we predominantly recorded them at Waterstones, Tottenham Court Road, and that was with, do you know the program Hunted, where you got the people that go out on the run, and then you got a crew of people that have to go and catch them. So you have Peter Blexley, who's the chief hunter, and Danny, who is one of the the right-hand people, because I must admit I've not sin hunted. I shouldn't probably admit that, having spoken to them. But so Dani was just fantastic because she was covert specialist. She's done all of these different things within the force and has a position on drug policy. And most times you think that the police are going to be very much in favour of keeping drug policy, solidified and criminalised. But most times we find that they're the ones that want to create reform and some decriminalisation, legalisation.
Even though it could legitimately lose them part of their job role, I guess.
I was going to say, all those poor dogs, what would they do?
Just think
retirement.
Of the dogs.
Yeah. And partly political, Tiernan. Tell us about that.
So I do the partly political broadcast, which is basically what I do every week, so that I don't have to shout about things in a park. But I do political stand-up comedy, and so I thought the best way to stop all my material basically I was writing lots of material and it's becoming incredibly quickly irrelevant, so that if I can get it on a weekly podcast, that's the best thing to do. So it's lots and lots of jokes about the past week's politics, and then I interview actual clever experts like Jason here, who's also been on mine, about issues, so they can explain to an idiot like me what's actually going on. So this week I have Steve Sang, who tells me all about Chinese politics, which made me go, oh wow, I had no idea about any of that. So, and then I'll call Boris Johnson something rude. That's normally what happens, even though he's just left. So I've lost all my material. Damn him.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting week. When did it come out, this week's podcast?
This morning.
And
so
it's already a bit
I had
out
to
of
rewrite
date.
my episode 4 times yesterday, so that was really good fun. Oh, it's all about David Ocean. Oh, it's all about Boris Johnson. Oh no, when will this end? So that was really good fun. Yeah.
Cool. So we're talking about Stir Crazy today, which is your choice, Jason.
That is.
Can you give us a 2-minute synopsis and tell us why you chose it?
Well, it was firstly so difficult to choose because I was going through Netflix and I had a short list which I emailed to every one of you saying, right, which one of these? And I just couldn't make my mind up because I'm really invested in film. I love it. It's a solace for me. So part of the short list was Stir Crazy, and it was UK, but it said, let's go for that. It's going to be one of the more original things to do. And believe it or not, it's a childhood film of mine. It's so nostalgic. It really.
So you'd seen it before, had you?
It's one of those films that, when you can do karaoke to a film,
right.
You know it that well. It is like that for me because it's so ingrained into my childhood. I know it line for line. And when I watched it back last night, I realised just how much of it I still remember, even though I haven't seen it for about 15 years.
Sure.
And I do. It's not I probably shouldn't say it straight off, but it's not a great film, which is a bizarre thing to say when you're choosing it. But again, I think for me, it's so nostalgic.
Sure.
It's so of its time. And I was so worried as well going back into it, having chosen it the way we did. I thought, is this going to be highly sexist, highly racist, really inappropriate for this day and age? But it's actually not too bad. I was quite surprised on how much it does still hold up politically.
Yeah. I mean, when obviously myself and Helen often exchange prior thoughts before watching the film. For me, it's one of the films. I love Gene Wilder, love Richard Pryor, but just hadn't seen it. And it's an early 1980s film. Richard Pryor, Gene Wilder. I think either you or I said it's either going to be, racist, homophobic, misogynistic, or
all of them,
or all the above. And it just wasn't. There's some kind of silly allusions to things that wouldn't really happen. I mean, Gene Wilder, getting the girl just from knowing her for 5 minutes, for example, is always a bit daft. But that's what happens in films, isn't it? There was a gay character, a camp character in the prison. He wasn't really abused in any way, particularly for him. Richard Pryor did a few double takes of things he said and said, don't do that. But then they were all friends. They weren't that kind of character would have been ostracized in other films. So I don't think it was particularly brutal in that way.
I was surprised how well it held up because I really was expecting it to be highly dated for those reasons. And it wasn't until I was doing a little bit of sort of background research that I realised that Sidney Poitier directed it.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, well, that was one of the first things I realised when it came up on the screen. Well, obviously directed by Sidney Poitier. Which
was just such a surprise because, it's a name that I obviously really know. And to find out that he was involved in one of my childhood favourite films was just completely... And I suppose that in a way makes you realise why it does still hold up and it's not particularly racist. There are a few little things that are a little bit, contentious. But considering how old it is, the fact that it's really set in the deep south of America in the 1980s, it really could have been a lot worse on the PC front than what it is.
Yeah. So let us know. Can you explain what happens in the...
Yeah, and this is, again, the bizarre aspect is that once you start explaining what the actual plot, it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense or have any kind of continuity. So there's two guys, as we said, we've got two of my favourite characters, duos of all time, which are Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor. I think they are just legendary. I think they are so underrated in their movies. They're down on their luck, hard luck story. They're very much based in New York, not knowing what they're doing, fired from their jobs. For some reason, and this isn't really anything to do with the plot, but Gene Wilder is a playwright, which again doesn't really make any sense or have any point to the film. But it's just a driver for him to be motivated enough to go and do things. And that's what Gene Wilder is. He's a free spirit. He wants to go out there and progress his career. They then get locked up through a bank robbery that they didn't do. They get sent to a deep south prison, and then fun ensues.
Well, deep south prison for 125 years.
Yeah.
There's a lot of nonsense set up from the start, isn't there, Helen?
There is.
I think that's what it is, isn't it? It's just the setups are so tenuous.
Yeah.
Like the fact that they know where they wanted to go with the plot points, so they had to get the positions in to get them there.
Yeah.
Because it all culminates and resonates and crescendo on the fact that there's inter-prison rodeos, which... See, Tina's looking at this going, yeah, right, whatever, mate. It's just...
Well, I should point out that I've not done my homework for today. I feel very guilty. I haven't seen the film. I have stirred things quite crazily in that time, if that helps. And I've seen, See No Evil, Hear No Evil, which has got some of the same cast in it. But I haven't heard it. But I mean, now that you said it's not great, I sort of feel a little bit better about myself. But Prison Rodeo sounds properly incredible.
What happens in Tina's defence, though,
is it the most nonsense part of the plot? The prison radio thing.
It probably is.
Well, I mean, apart from the fact that they dress up as chickens and go dancing in a bank.
Well, it's because, I mean, I don't know, that kind of promo stuff happens, but it's the fact that Gene Wilder goes, guys, I've got us a gig, and he's so happy about it, and they're dancing in a bank. How does that work exactly? It doesn't make any sense as to why that works. And then for yourself, Tiernan, and for the rest of the listeners who won't watch this film, they finish up for the morning, go and have lunch, leave their bird costumes in the bank changing room, whatever that is. Someone creeps into the bank changing room, steals the suits, performs the show as them, and then robs the bank.
Yeah, I mean, your face says it already.
It sounds like a music video. That's what it sounds like to me. Some sort of probably like the
for
Far
promo
Side
for Kanye West or something.
And some sort of Spike Jonze music video. That's exactly what it sounds like.
I need to do a slight defence of banks, though, because you remember in the 80s, there was a lot of incentivisation to get a bank account. So you had like the Halifax money box, you had folders of fat packs. So I can kind of see why bird costume, they were dressed as woodpeckers doing a song and dance act. I can kind of slightly see why that was necessary in the 80s. But it is still a major tenuous plot point. There's no getting away from it.
There's lots of major tenuous plot points. Any that you want to point out, Helen?
I mean, you've openly admitted that you haven't seen it. I kind of wish.
Can I just say that I'm so to everyone, especially my family.
I mean, I kind of wished I hadn't.
That makes me feel better. I mean, I will admit that definitely makes me feel like I've saved an hour.
I think there's going to be a bit of a divide on this table that's formed automatically. I mean, I've seen a couple of Gene Wilder films, but I don't think I've ever seen a Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder film. Okay. And I remember trying to watch Blazing Saddles quite a while ago.
It's not got Richard Pryor in it.
Is it not?
No.
Oh, so what are the other ones then? Anyway,
I've got them here. So Silver Streak, Stir Crazy, See No Evil, Hear No Evil, Another You.
So who was he in Blazing Saddles with?
That was I can't think of his actor's name.
I don't know. I can't remember his name.
It wasn't Richard Pryor. Yeah. No.
Oh well, that I've definitely never ever seen any.
Richard Pryor you might recognise mainly from Superman 3.
I haven't seen Superman 3.
What?
I mean, the only thing I really know about Richard Pryor, and it was actually while he was filming this, was when he set himself on fire.
He was troubled. Yeah.
His stand-up's amazing. Like his if you watch any of his stand-up specials, they are just incredible. Partly because the jokes are incredible, but also because the sheer force of personality of him and the honesty of his stand-up. He was one of the first comedians that was incredibly honest on stage about being abused, about his kind of health problems, and it was mind-blowing. I think for its time as well. I mean, it probably would have less impact now, but even just watching him perform it is unbelievable.
It's shocking because his his mum was a prostitute, if I remember rightly, and he grew up in a bordello, and obviously had to see his mum go through all these kind of things, go through drugs, and he was into drugs early. So for him to have gotten to a stage where he got into comedy is such a success, but obviously he's just surrounded by drugs, so he just never kind of left that behind, and it was just kind of permanently fucked in some way, shape or form. But ultimately it's just a super hilarious guy, and a lot of comedians, not just black comedians like Eddie Murphy and Chris Rock, but there's a lot of comedians nowadays who like say, shit man, like Richard Pryor was the one that opened a lot of doors for us and opened a lot of ideas and avenues for us that couldn't have been done before. So he's definitely like a pioneer comedian.
I think he was one of the people that started, and possibly sort of Lenny Bruce before him, but he was one of the comedians that really, George Carlin as well, that in that group of comedians that opened up comedy to being stories and real life experiences rather than just being jokes. You know, they were the kind of people that made observational comedy a lot more than just, hey, you know, a thing. It became, this is my life and it's a mess, you know, and it's suddenly much more exciting.
I think that's why the whole point of Stir Crazy is they just took characters that work and made them pretty much improvised throughout that film, and that's why Stir Crazy was made.
Do you reckon they improvised?
I think there was some scenes that were ad-libbed to a degree.
Right.
Prime example, just when they're messing about in cell blocks and things like that. I think that there's got to be artistic license within that, because it was just so unstructured and pointless. That's got to be the only reason why they put those scenes in, surely. But I think the reason why these films were constructed was that two hot personalities at the time stick them together and see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's just what kind of happened there. I remember, so See No Evil, Hear No Evil, I saw quite a few times as a kid. That's one my dad I think he just saw it in Woolworths and brought it back, and we watched it, and that's one of the like 15 videos we had, so it was on constant recycle.
And this is something you brought up on a previous episode, the fact that the way we consume films now is so different, because we do have, I think, our generation, I'm sounding really old now, I'm born 1980, but I think
same. This film came out the 1st of January 1980 according to IMDb, which is my birthday.
Oh wow.
Tuesday. You are as old as this film.
I am as old as this film, yeah.
And I think we consume them so differently, to the point where we did have like a certain amount of videos that we watched over and over again. And for me, this was recorded off of late night TV, which then got recycled throughout my childhood.
You had to fast forward through the adverts.
Yeah, exactly it. So of course we don't have that now with the fact we've got Netflix. We just consume things differently. And I think that is why I've got an emotional attachment to this. Not because it's a good film, because it's really genuinely not a good film. And I realised that last night when I watched it. But it's because of the nostalgia and because it's so of its time, not just on cinematic version, but also how I consumed.
Yeah. And I think there's a fair few films which I so don't want to rewatch, because as a kid I liked them, but now I just think about the storyline and think that's wank, isn't it?
Yeah.
You try not to think too hard about some of your firm favourites from the past.
Does anyone watch The Golden Child?
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't seen it recently. Is it not still stand up? Or?
Oh, it's atrocious.
Oh, that's sad. Oh, that's so sad.
See,
we got to watch that at school once in the afternoon.
What?
Because
that's amazing.
Yeah, I know. I can't remember what happened. I don't think the teacher was meant to put it on.
I've never heard of that one.
Blew on mine.
It's an Eddie Murphy joint.
Yeah, no, I've never seen that. See, this is another interesting thing as well, because obviously you've got quite a lot of prior association with this.
Yeah.
Whereas I have zero
knowledge of it.
Or association. And it's quite interesting how the certain types of film that you do have that kind of attachment. So we did Midnight Run recently, and you'd never seen Midnight Run, and I'd seen it, hundreds of times. And it's kind of interesting, which are these kind of not necessarily the bigger films of that period, but the kind of smaller ones that you've grown up with and the relationship that you now have with them then. It's quite fascinating.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think for me, that is pretty much my entire childhood. It's just working out like The Goonies, for example. It's still a good film, but there's so many points in it that just really don't hold up. Like there's some terrible dialogue, there's some terrible cut scenes, like awful editing. But it's just still a great film to me because of what my childhood was around it.
Yeah, absolutely. Nostalgia. Although I was never that big a fan of The Goonies. I'd watch it.
Yeah, I was never that big a fan either. I felt sort of vilified for it for years. After I enjoyed it, but I was such an Indiana Jones and Star Wars kid that I just watched them on endless repeat rather than anything else.
Rather than The Goonies.
Yeah.
Right, so Stir Crazy, I guess we're kind of dancing around it. You said it, Jason. It's not that good a film. This is my first time watching it, even though I'm a big fan of Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor. Helen from the start was not happy.
And I've not even seen it.
I feel really bad now.
I mean, that's how I rate it.
I've given you the worst episode of this podcast ever.
On the WhatsApp from Helen, typically the response to a film you're not looking forward to is it's just a one line. It's the running length of the film. We didn't have that this time.
No, I mean, it is quite long though.
Yeah. 1 hour 51 for a comedy is
I was surprised by that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had no idea it was that long. And I think the only thing I can imagine is that being as a TV edit as a kid, I reckon it's been chopped down a lot more.
Oh, but there'll be lots of less swearing.
Was there any? I mean, I think what I was expecting there to be a lot of things where I was like, oh, maybe that's not quite funny now, but there wasn't any of that.
No, that's what we're saying about there was no real homophobia, misogyny, or that kind of antics in the film, was it? It was just.
I think it was quite sensitively done, and I don't know if that's because of Sidney Poitier directing.
I mean, Sidney Poitier, I've never heard him swear once in any film.
I can't imagine him swearing.
No.
I think it would be really traumatizing.
There's a couple of F words, Richard Pryor chucks a few in.
Is it only a couple? I just assumed because like with Midnight Run,
there's a lot of that.
There's a lot, but I just
for its time.
I just didn't register. I just don't register unless it's like a really pointed F-bomb. I don't really register them anymore. But I guess watching Midnight Run as a kid, you'd be like, oh, he said the F word, and again. But I just assumed they were both always swearing. Maybe they weren't.
I think I painted a lot more swearing onto it than what there actually was, because
Right.
I can literally only count from last night's viewing about 2, and they were so disposable. They weren't, necessary. But yeah, other than that, there really wasn't that much in the way of bad. Well, there was terrible dialogue, but not for swearing. Put it that way. But yeah, the script is, I think, tenuous. It's just again, having watched it back with an adult head, it was just the plot lines just really.
Was it just really just made as a vehicle for those two then?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah.
I think my kind of defense of it, if there is any, is just it's nice to see them on screen together, and it's nice to see Richard Pryor's stupid face. It's nice to see Gene Wilder's stupid face. It's just a shame that they weren't doing funnier stuff with their stupid faces that they do typically. I think the funniest bit, there's a funny bit at the start when Richard Pryor accidentally gave cannabis to people, and there's a bit of a laughter there, and there's a bit of when they're playing cards in the jail cell with Grossberger.
Yeah,
I thought that was quite funny, and Richard Pryor putting his leg into Gene Wilder's trouser leg, that was quite funny. I can't think of anything else though for me.
There really isn't a laugh a minute, is there?
No.
That was the other thing that I realised when I was watching it back last night.
That's so bad. If it's not a laugh a minute, you've got a long time to go not laughing.
Exactly. It really is a long film for not a lot of plot, not a lot of laughter.
and not really much happens in it.
Other than the rodeo, which again, just to explain the rodeo thing, the warden has a big rivalry with another prison.
Mm-hmm.
So they have an inter-prison rodeo, which they put money on, gamble, blah, blah, blah. And it turns out that Gene Wilder is a fantastic rodeo rider for no good reason.
Because he went into the warden's office, and the warden has a mechanical bull. And the warden said, sit on that. And he sat on it
and turned it up to 6.
Yeah.
In a Spinal Tap moment, and that was it. It was the best rodeo ride anybody's seen, and therefore was going to be the one that competed in the inter-prison rodeo. He held out for terms because he wasn't going to sign up, and Gene Wilder said, no, I'm not going to do it. Well, we need to get some better conditions for the prison, which he got, and then eventually the rodeo you're looking at me as if this is completely a bizarre concept here. And
well, I am and I'm not. I'm also sort of thinking, like, how else would you find out you're the best rodeo rider? Because it's not like it's one of those things you just would stumble across. Do you know what I mean? Like one of us could be the best rodeo rider ever.
I don't think I am.
But the chances of us just suddenly having to sit on a mechanical bull are quite slim. So in my head, I'm thinking, how else would you find out?
Sure.
That's quite, I think that's very plausible. Very realistic.
I guess through the plot of the film, a lot of the stuff we don't see is how many people have gone into the office and he's put on the bull. So
and they've come flying off.
Yeah. So we've just seen
But there's
one
no
person.
padding in that room. I mean,
was there?
It's a very small room to be having a trial for rodeo without any padding.
I was concerned for Gene Wilder's stunt double. in that scene. Did you notice the stunt double during the radio scenes?
Yeah, the bit at the end where they're having to rip the money off the bull's horns.
Yeah.
It's terrible stunt doubling.
Because it had hair which was maybe Gene Wilder's colour, and he was like ripped.
That's the thing with CGI nowadays that you really don't get with yesteryear's film, where you had such a terrible stunt double in loose clothing and terrible hair that was supposed to replicate.
I really miss stunt doubles. Have you ever seen that thing where and it's not films, but where they went back through episodes of Friends and showed you all the scenes where it blatantly wasn't those actors?
No.
And it's really weird because you're like, how did I never see that? But it's like definitely not Rachel. It's definitely not Jennifer Aniston sitting there. They've just got all the stunt doubles in for when they weren't around to film at the same time. And there's loads of films like that if you see the stills of them, you kind of go, oh, that wasn't them at all. Yeah. It's really weird. And yeah, you're right. Now they just kind of digitally change their face so that they...
It's like an army of Tom Cruise lookalikes just walking around with nothing to do.
That's a terrifying... He probably keeps them all in his house, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And sends them out to get groceries. Weird.
I've been watching Arrested Development from episode 1 all the way through. I don't know if you've seen it. But it's a fantastic comedy. But what I've noticed a lot on this rewatch is the amount of ADR. So there's a lot of over-the-shoulder talking, or you can kind of see them, they're kind of nodding their head when there's like badly mismatched, even though you can't see the lips moving, you could tell that's not what they're saying in any way, shape or form. And that kind of thing, you kind of think you should stop that. This is 2003 this came out, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that was quite a while ago now.
15 years.
And judging from the recent comments, it sounded like they all hated each other anyway. So
I haven't seen the, I've not.
Yeah, because I haven't seen the most recent series, but the one before, which I didn't enjoy. I really enjoyed the first three, and then the fourth one, Arrested Development, was a bit rubbish. But that was the one where they couldn't all be in the same room at any time, so it all had to be like that.
There's some really bad green screen in that as well.
Yeah, I mean, you could feel it in the way, like nobody bounces off each other. There's no energy. It's really bad.
Should we head to the scores, guys? I'm not sure what
else you want to say.
I feel like I really in my defence, I did put a short list of 5, and what was it? It was About Time, which is the Richard Curtis film, which I again is a real kind of love of mine. I'm a bit guilty pleasure of Richard Curtis. What other ones were there? Fear of 13, which is a documentary, which I think is fantastic. By the way, if you've not seen that, watch it, because it's such an original documentary concept. And cheap plug, but the producer of it's going to be on Stop and Search. I've already recorded it. So, and I was going to do a hideous thing and self-reference as well, because I've got a film on Netflix, but I found out it's no longer on there. It's been taken off. So
what was that?
The Culture Heist. It was filmed in 2014, so it's had its time. So, but I can't remember what the other ones were. But Stir Crazy for me was just pure nostalgia. It was just really
it's a perfect reason to bring it on there. If you've watched it as a kid, and that's what Netflix is for.
Yeah, and I'd not seen it.
Yeah, and I'd not seen it, and for me it was a blind spot, and unfortunately it didn't hit the mark, and other films will. I mean, I
was quite surprised. I was expecting it to maybe be a little bit dated, but I was just really more surprised that I just didn't find any of it funny.
If you were to remake it,
even if I thought, well, I shouldn't really be laughing at that, but it's quite funny.
Yeah, there wasn't that.
No, which was really weird.
If you were to do a quick remake, who would you get to do those? I don't think for one second it would be a remake, but who would you get to do the characters? Because I can't think of anybody that's remotely touchable to Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor. I think.
Well, I mean, I was just going to say, there's that film with Will Ferrell and
John C. Reilly?
No.
Which one?
A black guy. It's Get Out, or I'll find the name.
Oh yes, yeah, I know the one you mean. I can't think.
Hard something.
But Talladega Nights was on my shortlist as well. I was going to pick that one because again, it's just such a.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of these.
Have you not?
No.
See, I love Talladega Nights. I'm always quoting it. What do I do with my hands?
That's one of the few ones I haven't seen. I haven't seen Talladega Nights.
So basically, we're never having a movie night, are we, Tiernan?
No, that's it. Yeah,
we totally don't dovetail on our films.
I probably wouldn't turn up, judging by my homework abilities this time around.
Get Hard.
Oh,
that's it.
Yeah, Kevin Hart and Will Ferrell.
Yeah, actually, Will Ferrell and Gene Wilder, I can see similarities in there.
Yeah, but
with the hair.
Kevin Hart's not quite a Richard Pryor.
No, I wouldn't go. No, definitely not.
Maybe I don't know. Hannibal Buress is not. I don't know. I'll have to think about that.
I always thought that Grossberger was King Kong Bundy as well, but I don't think it actually is it? That's a wrestling reference. I'm probably only wrestling fan in the room.
No, I've heard the name, but I couldn't relate it to you.
No, so yeah, basically I'm very disillusioned along with the rest of you. So.
Yeah, so unfortunate.
I mean, it's kind of interesting. they did do a lot of these films in the 80s where they literally just made a film because of a pairing.
Yeah.
And that has kind of trailed off.
Yeah, the kind of
Quite a
odd
bit
couple
now.
thing.
Yeah.
The odd couple more than buddy comedy. But here they were really good friends from the outset, weren't they? Is it called? What's that film? Walter Matthau and I'm going to ask.
The Odd Couple.
Yeah, it's just called The Odd Couple. Yeah.
Jack Lemmon.
Jack Lemmon. And are they? I can't remember. I've only seen it once, but were they friends in it, or were they kind of smushed together through circumstances?
I've actually never seen that.
I don't know,
either.
because they did another couple of films together after that, didn't they?
Yeah.
Which weren't as big.
No.
But I don't know if they were friends in real life.
So yeah, that's an example of pairings where they just kind of put them together again.
It's kind of like the only person who's really sort of done a lot of them is Jackie Chan, because obviously he did
with Chris Tucker
and Owen Wilson as well.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. What's the
I quite
one?
like those films.
Shanghai
Noon and
then-
Shanghai Nights. They're quite fun.
Yeah. Which is the sequel one? Which is the
Nights,
that
the
is
one where
of
they're in
worst-
England.
That is definitely one of the worst films that's ever happened.
Which is the one with Chris? What was the one with Chris Tucker called?
Rush Hour.
Rush Hour. There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
I loved Rush Hour. Right, let's go to the scores, guys.
Right.
We're so done with New Year, New You. This year, it's more you on Bumble. More of you shamelessly sending playlists, especially that one filled with show tunes. More of you finding Geminis because you know you always like them. More of you dating with intention because you know what you want. And you know what? We love that for you. Someone else will too. Be more you this year and find them on Bumble.
So yeah, if you're not familiar with our scores, they're all out of 5. You can have decimal places and you can have a 0 but no minuses. And the first one is the recommendability. And as it's your choice, Jason, we'll start with you.
I did write these down, but I'm actually going to amend them on the day because I haven't had this conversation. You know, when you talk yourself out of something. So I did have it down as a 3, but based on the fact that none of us have remotely had a good word to say about this.
I mean, you should go with your gut. Don't feel as though you have to change scores.
I'll go with 2 because I honestly don't think I'm going to go around someone's house and go, should we put Stir Crazy on? I just don't think that's ever going to come out. So yeah, 2, I'll go for that.
What we're going to do, Tiernan, is probably you're just going to mirror Jason's scores because you can't.
Oh man!
Unless-
because the thing is, I would say. Based
do you want to see it?
I mean,
So
I'm curious.
maybe
but
give it a
after
score.
hearing you talk about it, I probably would have gone with the 2. I would have gone with the 2. But then I also feel like I don't want to bow down to peer pressure. I don't want to be oppressed by you guys. You know, what's to say that I might think it's incredible? But I'm gonna go with the 2 right now.
Okay.
Just based on
Okay, so if you do have an opinion based on our discussion of it, then yeah, feel free to throw a score in the mix.
I will do.
Helen.
I mean, I genuinely thought that it would at least be funny even in a way that
That was close to the bone.
I was a bit like, ooh, not really funny this way. Or, I don't know, it was a bit boring. I didn't really watch it all the way to the end either, so I don't really know.
Don't know how it ended.
I assume they broke out of prison or
So
something.
the ending is almost the best bit because, again, as Kobi said at the start, it's so tenuous because Gene Wilder gets the girl. It's like, why? There was absolutely no need for that. She just discards the rest of her life to follow along with an ex-convict, essentially.
And is that the same woman who he stalked in the apartment store at the start?
No, that was just a pointless setup.
Random non-sequitur, yeah.
I didn't even get that. Sorry. 0.
I'm going to give it 2.5 because I think there are. I mean, I looked at IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, and there were people who probably loved it, and I'm sure there are. It is one of the classic pairings. People talk about this as one of the things. So I think there will be people that really enjoy it and get it, but it wasn't for me.
I think you've got to have really, really loved it when you were younger and kind of have like that little special place for those two together.
So I think people will love this, not me.
And that's what it is. It's the fact that I watched it as a child when I shouldn't be watching that adult film.
Yeah.
And that is exactly why I connected to it.
Because that's one of the best things ever.
It is. It's so...
18 certificate. Ooh.
Repeat viewing score, Jason.
Again, it's tricky because if I was to base it on my childhood self, then it would probably have to be like a 5 because I did have it on... It was one of the ones that I did on loop.
Sure.
But now, having had a good couple of decades break from it, I'd probably put it midway, about 3.
Okay.
because I think it is one of those ones that if we still did have late night TV culture, I think that you'd put it on, have it there playing as you're brushing your teeth, and then just walk away from it and dip in and out. I think it's accessible, but because that's one of the other things that I find with certain modern day films is that unless you sit down and you properly get into it, there's just no way that you can access it because it's just too.
It's too much on.
Yeah.
How many times are you going to rewatch the film after not watching it?
Well, I mean, the fact is, I wouldn't give it a repeat viewing, but that's because I haven't seen it once, so therefore I actually can't.
You have to give it a viewing score.
I have to give it a viewing score. So, I mean, I am now curious, but I'm not that curious. I mean, you didn't even make it to the end, Helen. So I'm going to go for I'll go for a 2.5.
This is the most like freestyle scoring we've ever had.
Helen.
Yeah, sorry. I would not go near this ever again. 0.
Repeat viewing score. It's a 1. It's a 1 from me. This is probably the lowest I've given anything, I think.
I like to think that I'm either going to be like the best guest or the worst guest on this. So I'm going for the worst. I'm going for the
I'm
absolute
slightly worried we've
bottom
ruined
end
your
score.
childhood. That's all. I'm worried that you're going to go home and have this like horrible just weeping.
I'm going to reassess everything now.
That was hours of my life. I could have been doing something else.
Empire
you could be the
Strikes
best
Back.
rodeo guy ever if you hadn't spent your time watching this film.
Exactly. I'm going to need to try it now. Is there something around Camden that I can try?
There must be a rodeo bull somewhere in a 5-mile vicinity of this.
Or it's Camden. There'll probably be somebody dressed as a rodeo bull.
That actually, you've just reminded me of probably the best joke in it, whereas Gene Wilder's going nuts in a cell. He starts riding someone's back and then he jumps off and goes, "That guy's crazy. He thinks he's a horse." That was the best joke in it for me, and that was pretty much the only time I laughed last night when I watched it back. So feel free to nick it in your set.
Sure, I'll just randomly point at people in the audience and
that he thinks he's a horse.
Really well.
I did quite like when they're trying to break down his spirits, and they put him in solitary confinement, and he comes out and goes, "Can I just have one more day, please?"
I mean, if I'd heard these gags before I'd given my scores, I might have changed them. But it's too late now, guys.
Too late now.
Too late now.
Small screen score, Jason.
Yeah, I think it only works on the small screen. I don't think it's remotely accessible on the big screen. So it would have to be probably. Just to get the average up, I'm going to go for. Actually, no, let's go for 3. I originally had it down somehow as a 5, but yeah, I'm going to remember.
I mean,
that.
if you want to give it some points, you need to give it.
Go for 5 then. Yeah, I was doing the maths in my head of do I want the lowest? What is your lowest score that you've had?
Well,
on
we'll have a look at the end. Yeah.
Tiernan.
I'm not going to get to see it on a big screen because I've only got a reasonable sized television. So if I do see it, I reckon it'll have to 4. I'm going to give it a 4 because why not? Yeah.
Helen.
I'm also giving it a 4. Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the things that it is on there, and if you did watch it as a childhood film, then it might be worth a revisit. Yeah, it's a 4. I definitely would have been very angry if I'd seen it at the cinema.
Would you want it on an even smaller screen than the one you have? Like, would you want it on a tiny screen?
I mean, there's just nothing happens in it. Is another thing. I was just really surprised that.
See, I'm going to set up an open air screening with a rodeo.
How it got made.
Yeah,
that's true.
The Prison Break is beyond random. What happened to Grossberg? He doesn't get out, does he? He just gets stuck in there.
Even as a child, I realised that he was giving himself out. He was supposed to be like this horrible mass murderer, but he was actually a really sweet character that was going to chuck himself on the altar for the rest of everybody else.
Because it's too large to escape underneath the hatch, basically. Grossberg was too fat to escape.
Oh dear.
I'm giving it a 4 for small screen score. Engagement score, Jason.
Yeah, again, I originally had this down as a 4, but how can I remotely give it that after this conversation? So I think it'll have to be based purely on me. I'm going to go for a 3 because I was engaged purely on nostalgia, which I've repeated a million times.
I've been engaged by your conversation about it, but actually I've probably spent more time on my phone than watching the film, so I'm going to go for 2.
Helen.
I lost the will before the end. I'm going to give it a 1. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I was thinking about it though while I was watching it, that other than The Shawshank Redemption, I was trying to think about other films set in prisons, and I couldn't really think of that many.
Escape from Alcatraz was always quite a childhood favourite of mine because I like the process of people escaping, which sounds bizarre.
Would you say, what about Great Escape? Is that prison near enough for you? Is
I haven't seen that one.
Escape to Victory, which is the
That's
bizarre,
one. Is
yeah,
that
the
football
bizarre
one?
football
Yeah,
one.
that's amazing. With Stallone in, isn't it?
Stallone, Bobby
Pele.
Moore.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
That was and The Rock. The Rock's a prison film, but they're breaking in.
Yeah.
There's
So I
three
don't know if that
versions of that
counts.
film. So there's The Longest Yard, which is the one with what's his name? Cannonball Run mustache. What's his name?
Oh, Tom Selleck. No,
No.
The other one.
Reynolds.
Burt Reynolds. Yeah, and then it got remade with Adam
Moustache
Sandler, and then it also got made with.
No, you're thinking of Mean Machine.
Oh yeah, I am.
No,
aren't I?
that's
What's the Rock one?
The Rock is.
The Rock is
Nicolas Cage.
The
and-
Rock.
Cage and
See, I'm
Sean
thinking
Connery,
of
isn't
the
it?
Rock.
Yeah, and then there's Green Mile's a prison one.
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well. It's got to be more prison films than that.
There will be.
There are, but in terms of the kind of the premise is that obviously someone is in prison and then they need to break out of it.
Tango and Cash. There's a. I'm reading that
Which is
myself.
that's another
now.
buddy film as well, isn't
Yes.
it?
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it a. I'm going to give it a 2 because I was willing it because there's so much like love for Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor. Did you notice Jonathan Banks, aka Mike Ehrmantraut? If anyone watches Breaking Bad or Best Call Saul in there,
No.
do you ever watch Breaking Bad?
I actually tried.
That's right. Right, as someone who talks about drug policy, he's not seen The Wire, drug policy reform. He's not seen The Wire, and he's not seen Breaking Bad.
It's because when I'm off the clock, I try and avoid drugs.
Yeah, I mean, Breaking Bad is really not worth it.
No.
Breaking Bad's worth it.
It's definitely worth it.
Yeah.
But also even more so because then you can watch Better Call Saul, which I think is even better.
Right.
But because we've talked, you need to watch The Wire so you can come on the Wire podcast.
Right. Okay.
But you do need to watch that.
Yeah.
It's the best TV series ever made.
So what did I say? 2. So that gives us an overall score of 2.375.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the lowest.
No.
We've definitely had some ones in there. We've got one that's completely zeros. But
Pride and Prejudice and Zombies was
Oh,
2.3.
wow, that sounds an amazing film.
It's not.
What was the one that was all zeros?
Oh, Hurricane Bianca.
We haven't got around to reviewing that yet.
Oh.
But I know it's not going to be particularly high.
Hurricane Bianca.
There's definitely
There's,
one that came in as a 1 somewhere. This is thrilling for our listeners. Sorry, we're just having a little bit of a scroll.
2.4. Drunken Master. That was a disappointment.
Yeah, that was terrible.
It's a 2.4 there. What one's that?
Prophecy.
2.4. Pretty sure there's one.
2.3
that
Advantageous. 2.1
Sharknado
Sharknado.
3. So if you've beaten Sharknado 3.
Yeah.
Is Over the Top the one, the arm wresting one?
It
That's
is,
the one,
yeah.
1.7. That thing you do. That was.
1.7. Yeah,
was
so
far
it's not
too
the
low.
worst. And 1.9.
And Arc.
So
1.9.
yeah, it's not the worst.
No, it's not the worst.
Yeah,
Wow,
there you
What's
go.
the tagline for Sharknado 3?
Please God, no more.
Oh my God, why are there still sharks?
Yeah. Flying. Okay, guys. Jason, Tiernan, let us know where we can find you online and say goodbye to the listeners.
So I'm at Jason Tron on Twitter, which is actually my name. And then if you want to follow anything to do with drug policy and stop and search, then at UK Leap.
Yeah.
I'm on Twitter at Tiernan Douieb. So if you just throw a lot of vowels onto your keyboard and have a go and spell that. And then podcast is Partly Political Broadcast, which is available at all of your favourite podcast outlets and your least favourite ones.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, guys, for your time.
Thanks for coming on.
Cheers.
Thank you for having
Having
us.
us.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. As always, you can find us on iTunes. Do subscribe and leave us a nice review if you feel like it. You can find us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod, and the website is flixwatcher.tv. Thanks, as always, to the mighty people for their mighty, mighty tunes, and thanks to Brendan Russell for his awesome editing skills.